October 29, 1862, a small skirmish in rural Missouri. 240 black soldiers, approximately 700 Confederate guerrillas. What happened that day changed the course of the entire Civil War. This is the battle America almost forgot. When the Civil War began, President Abraham Lincoln refused to let black people fight, not for reasons of honor, for political survival. Lincoln feared that allowing former slaves to carry weapons would push neutral states toward the Confederacy. So for the first year and a half of the war, despite desperate need for soldiers, despite mounting casualties, black men were excluded. That changed in Kansas. In August 1862, U.S. Senator James H. Lane began recruiting free black people and escaped slaves into what would become the first Kansas Colored Volunteer Infantry. These were men from Missouri and Arkansas. Some had escaped slavery themselves, walking to Kansas seeking freedom. They arrived at Fort Lincoln expecting to fight. Instead, they were relegated to guarding Confederate prisoners and digging ditches. Manual labor, drudgery. For weeks they waited. On October 15th, Colonel N.P. Chipman inspected the 1st Kansas. He declared them ready for battle. But the War Department wouldn't deploy them. Not yet. The politics were too volatile. Then word came, Confederate guerrillas were terrorizing the Missouri-Kansas border. They were operating from Hog Island in Bates County, launching attacks on Union operations. The main Union armies were engaged in Arkansas. No troops were available, except one regiment, a regiment that had been waiting to prove itself. On October 26, Major Benjamin Henning ordered the 1st Kansas into Bates County. Their mission, eliminate the guerrilla threat, capture or kill. The regiment marched toward Confederate-held territory. On October 27th, they found a strategic position, the home of Enoch and Christiana Toothman, local Confederate sympathizers. The black soldiers commandeered the property, took up defensive positions, and renamed it Fort Africa. They built makeshift fortifications from fence rails, dug into the earth, and waited. Tuesday brought skirmishing, long-range fire, testing the other side's strength. Wednesday brought fire, literal fire. The Confederates set the prairie ablaze, trying to force the Union regiment into the open. Captain Henry Seaman ordered backfires. The smoke became so thick, so suffocating, that the coming battle would unfold in what witnesses described as a hellish backdrop of smoke and flame. On October 29th, around 130 rebel horsemen charged from the woods. What followed was not a skirmish. It was a calculated trap. The rebels had lured a black detachment away from Fort Africa, separated them, and now, outnumbered 6-1 on horseback, they charged. The black soldiers could have broken, could have retreated. Instead, they held their ground. Listen to what an eyewitness reported about that moment. He said, "I have witnessed some hard fights, but I never saw a braver sight than that handful of brave men fighting 117 men who were all around and in amongst them. The enemy cried out to the men to surrender, but they told them never. Never, while being charged by mounted rebels, while the prairie burned around them, while outnumbered and surrounded. They said never. The hand-to-hand combat was fierce, brutal. A Cherokee scout named John Sixkiller, who had enlisted with his 5 freedmen, stood and fought despite being shot multiple times. Before he died, he killed 4 Confederate soldiers, shooting 2, bayoneting a 3rd, and killing another with his rifle butt. He refused to yield. His men refused to yield. Reinforcements arrived from Fort Africa. The Confederate cavalry retreated. When the smoke cleared, 8 black soldiers lay dead. 11 more were wounded. But the guerrillas had broken. They fled the field. The next day, Union forces found Hog Island abandoned. The 1st Kansas Colored had won. News of the battle spread from Missouri to the East Coast within days. And what everyone reported was stunning. According to Richard Hinton, the 1st Kansas adjutant, reporting to the Leavenworth Daily Conservative, the battle proved that Negroes are splendid soldiers. Even the Confederates couldn't deny what they'd witnessed. Pro-rebel guerrilla Captain Bill Turman, quoted in the New York Times, said the black soldiers fought like tigers. The New York Times called their defense desperate bravery. Desperate bravery. Those were the words America needed to hear, because this victory did something extraordinary. It shattered the myth that black men couldn't fight, couldn't hold their ground, couldn't look death in the face and refuse to surrender. The myth died on that burning prairie in Bates County, Missouri. After Island Mound, everything changed. The Emancipation Proclamation went into effect on January 1st, 1863, officially authorizing black soldiers to serve in the Union Army. The floodgates opened. Over 180,000 black soldiers eventually served in the Civil War, and it all traced back to 240 men who said never while facing down 700 enemies. The 1st Kansas Colored finished the war as one of the hardest fighting regiments in the entire conflict. They were redesignated as the 79th United States Colored Troops. Their service proved that the color of a man's skin had nothing to do with his courage. In 2012, Missouri established the Battle of Island Mound State Historic Site to preserve this history. In 2015, a documentary about their heroism won 2 Emmy Awards. But for 150 years, this first battle, the moment that changed everything, was nearly forgotten. Nearly, but not completely, because now you know. On October 29, 1862, freedom fighters made their stand. They proved themselves, and they changed the course of history. If this battle moved you, if you're sitting there realizing how much of American history has been buried, comment below. Tell me, how many of your history classes covered the Battle of Island Mound? And why do you think we're only now learning about the bravery of these men? Like this video, share it, comment, subscribe to Ikamafuna History TV, because these stories deserve to be known, because these heroes deserve to be remembered.